begin speaking. We've been cleared for takeoff and we'll be departing shortly.
Go ahead, give that man a round of applause.
That boy's got talent.
Welcome back to another installment, Craft and Trade Entertainment. Shani Haycraft with you, and we're going to go over today. We're not going to do anything inside of the box or anything to do with Pro Tools necessarily. We're going to do today. I'm going to go over like what gear I have in my studio, which isn't much really, and compared to what other people might have. And then also we're going to kind of go over if you're building your first studio or you're thinking about building your first studio, maybe some things to keep in mind, and when you're making decisions on what you're going to buy, how you're going to put it together, things like that. But the first two components, in my opinion, that you need to worry about when it comes to starting your studio is your computer and your interface. Obviously, I think you probably know what a computer is. Mine's down here. It's got all these stickers on it, but it's a computer I built. It's old. It was a bit mining board that a friend of mine that owns a computer shop gave to me. And it's old, like DDR2, but it had 6 RAM slots. So I think I have like 20 or 24 RAMs of or gigs of RAM, and I think maybe an i7 processor. I'm not certain. It's been a long time since I built it. It's got a GTX 1070 video card, which probably needs upgraded as well. But anyway, you want to make sure that you have, no matter which direction you go, you've got a nice processor, plenty of RAM. I suggest a really nice video card or graphics card too, because you'll probably, if you're doing audio and things like that, you might want to get into what I'm getting into now, which is YouTube stuff. And, I've done music videos as well. So, you need to have quite a bit of power for those type of projects. And so anyway, one other thing that you want to keep in mind as far as your, processor wise, besides that is hard drives. You have 2 options. You have your traditional hard drives, which spin. And if you do go that route, you want to make sure that the hard drives that you buy spin fast enough according to whatever the DAW you use, the specifications for that, revolutions per minute, to make sure there's no latency or any kind of, glitches or hiccups during the recording process. Because, when it comes to music and audio recording, the timing of it all is key. And latency, if you have any latency, it's going to be near impossible to really do things the way that you want to do them. So that's one. And your other option is solid state drives, SSDs. I'm not saying anything that anybody doesn't know, but like if you're getting into it, it may be something that you don't know, or maybe you don't know how it all fits together. We're going to go over it all. But SSDs, they don't have any moving parts. They're a lot more reliable. That's what I use for both my system drive and also my media drive. So one thing to keep in mind, and what I recommend that you have at least 2 hard drives in your computer. And the reason being, or at least the school of thought that I was taught, is that you want to have one drive at least to read from, which is, having whatever, Pro Tools or GarageBand, whatever you use, Logic, whatever you use. You want to have one hard drive that you're reading the information from the application, and then you want to have a dedicated drive for your media that you're writing to, or you're recording, whatever, guitar, vocals, that's being saved or written to another drive, so that you're only reading from this drive and you're only writing to that drive, and you don't have a simultaneous opposite flow of traffic on one drive. And also to keep your system drive like less than 50% full to operate the right way. Is that stuff true? I don't really know, but it's stuff that I practice because it seemed like reliable information that made sense to me. But as far as if you're going to build your own, you want to keep in mind like USB ports, if you're going to have enough of those, Wi-Fi card. I don't have a CD burner in mine anymore. It's obsolete to me, so I don't even worry about it. If it's video that you're going to get into, your video card, I have a GTX 1070. I don't know if I mentioned that. I probably need to upgrade that video card, but you want to think about HDMI outs, HDMI ins if you're going to be doing any kind of live streaming, like a capture type card in, when you build it. I don't have a capture card internally, because most of the camera equipment I have, I don't necessarily have to have a capture card. But so to move on from the computer part of it, you have your interface. And besides the computer, the interface is like the main hub of everything that has to do with getting any kind of audio into your computer. Well, recording from this microphone, or I don't know if you can see it. You probably can. It's just out of range, but I'll pull it into range for a minute here. This microphone is actually my vocal microphone. It is a Loudon Audio. I believe it's the Oceanus. I'm not certain. It's the 387 model. I just can't remember what it's actually called. But anywho, all those audio signals, whether you're going line into the front of it, or you're using one of the Phantom Power 48 volt Phantom Power preamps on the front of it. It has 4 of them, 4 channels of it, just a preamp. And but it has to get in there. And when it gets in there, it's going from what's called an analog signal, which is a solid stream of audio, into a digital signal that the computer can understand. And that signal is not analog. It's a reproduction of that analog signal. And some of your lower end interfaces versus your higher end interfaces don't do as good a job of that analog to digital and digital to analog conversion as the higher end ones do. And that's important because you want what you're hearing through your headphones, what you're hearing out of the speakers, that's the digital back to analog conversion. So you want to make sure like you're hearing a crystal clear or an accurate representation of what your DAW is putting out through your speakers, through that, making sure that conversion on the back end is as good as it is on the front end going in. And in my price range, when I bought this one, which is an Army Fireface 800, it was in my price range, the best AD-DA conversion there was before you're going up to money that I didn't have to spend. And another thing about the Fireface 800 is that it has an optical out on it, so you could daisy chain it versus via a light pipe to another Fireface 800. And then you'd have however many inputs on the back, because I couldn't tell you exactly how many inputs it has in the back and outputs. But I mean, it has a lot. But you can light pipe them together and have additional units. I don't know how many you can light pipe together. Probably an endless amount, I'd guess. I don't know. I've only just had this unit, just a singular unit, and I've never light piped it to another one. I just know that it has a capability. But everything goes into that and everything comes out of it. So that's very important because like I say, it's how your audio is getting into your computer and your DAW, and then it's how you're hearing it come out too. So it's that kind of, before I go on to the speakers, because I don't want to forget about the preamp, I have a Persona Studio channel, and it's got a true tube in it and you can adjust the tube drive right here. It's got a compressor on it, and it has an EQ. It's a 3-band, but I just don't care for the EQ necessarily. I would rather do that type of thing inside the DAW, so I just bypass the EQ on it. But it wasn't difficult to take the unit apart and change the tube out of it, and that's what I did. I mean, I'd already bought the tube I was going to replace it with or at the same time that I ordered the unit. And so this is what they look like. I don't know if you can see that very well, but that's the tube, a true glass tube. It's got the pins on the bottom of it, and they pull out, and you just replace it with one, line the pins up, replace it with whichever one you want. I did this Golden Lion tube because that's what they recommended for this one. And I do love it. Especially coupled with that mic. But anyway, and once again, that microphone that I showed you a moment ago is what runs through this preamp. And then that preamp has to go into the interface as well. So it all ties together once again. Speakers that I have, they are Focal CMS 50s, which have a 5-inch fiberglass woofer in them. Excuse me. And they are, whenever I first got them, I mean, I had KRKs before, and nothing against those, but when I got these, like I was listening to professional mixes, songs that, that I listened to as a fan, and I was just hearing them in a whole new light. Just the separation of the stereo field in those. Those were really nice, but what they did lack was a bottom end, and so I don't know if you can see it or not, but there is a subwoofer right here. You can see the blinking red and blue light. It's a Presonus. I'm not sure what model it is, but it looks like I think I remember it being. I think it's got a 10-inch woofer. Could be a 12-inch, but anyway, I mean, it added that low end that the Focals they lacked by themselves, because if I didn't have that, I'd be trying to push the low end up, to get them into those speakers. And by doing that, when I took that mix out to a car or something, it would just be all messed up. So that helped me with my low end. So what have I covered? I've covered computer, interface, I've covered the Focals, the subwoofer. I've covered the preamp. So let's go on to these two pieces of hardware that I haven't talked about yet. And that's being this right here, which is a Heritage Audio Successor, master bus compressor or mastering compressor, whatever you want to call it. And a TK-Lizer 2, which is a mastering EQ. And this unit, the Heritage Audio, truly what it's meant for is if you were sent a mix from just not a random person, but a client, you know what I mean? And it was just mixed. It wasn't mastered. So you have just a stereo of it. And so you would run that, we would pull that up and you would route that out. If you pull it up in Pro Tools or whatnot, you would route that out to, in my case, it's coming out of the RME Fireface, out of channels 7 and 8, into this mastering compressor. And then that's chained to this via 1/4 inch out to the inputs of the TK-Lizer. But I'll go over that in a moment. So this mastering compressor, I mean, it's just like any other compressor. But what I use it for is after I've done everything to the mix and I've got the mix like the way I like it, and I'm bringing it to a track, or I'll send all those individual, tracks, or maybe some of the bust groups of tracks out. They all end up going out to 7 and 8. And then they're chained to that and they come back into Pro Tools via an input on the back of the Fireface. But I don't use it heavily. I have it at like a 1.5 to 1, but I probably could bump it up to 2, but I just use it subtly and I just try to touch it. But it has all the other things that you'd normally see on a compressor. It has a tack release, side chain, gain makeup, but it does have a blend knob here at the very end. That's kind of cool. Like if you feel like you like the sound, but maybe it's just like a little bit too processed, you can always, as a kind of a cheat or whatever, you can pull that knob back to the dry signal a little bit and see if it gives the mix a little bit more natural bite and not so compressed. That's what that's for. And then it goes into the TK-Lizer 2, which is a mastering EQ. And so what it does, it's got mid-side EQ, which means that if you flip this little knob here or this switch over to the right, these 4 pots, they control the EQ of frequencies that are on the side of the mix, the sides of the mix. And if you switch it over to the far left, then these 4 knobs here, or these 4 sets of knobs, 4 pairs of knobs, they control all the frequencies that are right down the middle, which normally like you kick drum, snare, lead vocals, stuff like that. And then on the sides, maybe backing vocals and accompaniments and all that stuff. So you can kind of separate the 2 parts of the mix. And that comes in handy if you're sent a mix that's sent to you that you can't go back and change individual elements of it. It's already glued together in a stereo mix. This will kind of let you separate it just a hair further and maybe, tweak something on the side that might be a problem, or where you're not affecting the mids, or vice versa. And then when you get done, you can flip it back to the middle, which opens it back up to full spectrum. And you can see how that change that you made when you had it switched to either side sounded when you brought it back to full spectrum and not just mid, not just side. And then that goes back into Pro Tools, and then, I might throw like a little limiter on it or something to bring it up if I need to, whatever. But that's how that's routed. So, and then I think I don't know if I went over this, but this is just a headphone amp. It's on the Alesis, just so that I can have headphones or multiple headphones for whatever I need to. I have, I have these, which are AKGs or open backs. I just have those to mix in the headphones sometimes. They're comfortable. That's the main thing about them, is they're comfortable. I have a pair of AKGs, and they're all kind of wrapped up in something right now. What's going on here? Give me just a moment here. Anywho, you can't really see them, can you? Well, anyway, they're just closed backs just for tracking purposes. And then I have another pair of closed backs where the first ones I ever had. They're, can you see that? Sennheiser HD 280s, is that what those are? I've had those for like 20 years. The only thing I changed out on was just the ear cushions. So those lasted a long time. So I've gone over my headphones and all this stuff up here. I do have a Generation 1 machine, and I still have the actual original machine software because I like the sequencer better on the original machine software than the new one. I don't like how they've got that set up. It's like in a different spot. Like the original software to me made more sense, but I've got that. And what that is that's, for composing instrumentals or beats or whatever you want to do. And I'm not a huge beat maker, but I dabble around. And I think this is a lot of fun, especially coupled with this Akai MPK49, which is a MIDI controller as well. And the cool thing about using these two things together is when you're inside of Machine, if you have samples loaded up, like 4 different samples, when you hit pad 1, this will play whatever is on pad 1, and it has an octave up and down button. So you have more than 49 keys, or, you have more than what's available at one time on the keyboard just by hitting the octave up and down. But you just have 49 keys at one time. And then if you hit pad 2 to a different instrument, it instantaneously will play that on there. And what I like about Native Instruments Machine is that you could, I think, do the majority of everything that you wanted to do inside the software, or you could do the majority of anything that you needed to do on the hardware. But you can figure out what is more comfortable for you to do. Like, some things might be more comfortable for you to do on the hardware, and some things are easier for you to do clicking the mouse. And you can create your own hybrid of how much of the hardware you use and what you use it for, and how much of the software you use and what you use it for. And so then when you're doing that and have this at your disposal, it makes the process of putting, beats together or instrumentals together or whatever together a lot more fun, because you don't have to stop it. This allows the creative process to keep on going. You can hit this and you can play, and you can change patterns from here, or you can change patterns from there. It really has a lot of flexibility and versatility as far as from a musical standpoint, I feel like. So those are some pretty cool things too. What have I not gone over? I think I've gone over pretty well as far as what I have in my studio. But why do you make decisions on what you buy and what you get? It's like, I try to think of it aside from, say you already had a computer that met all the requirements that you needed. So we'll put that to the side. And you have $1,000, to start off with. I would probably throw a good chunk of my money towards what I could, a nice interface. Buy it used if you can. Do your research for what type of music you make. So how many inputs do I need? How many outputs do I need? If I buy an interface, it'd be nice if maybe I had enough preamps to do everything that I wanted to all in one unit, and then later on I could buy dedicated preamp units for this, and this. But if I'm going to buy an interface, it would be nice if it's not only an interface with a lot of channels in and out, but also maybe, a good amount of preamps for me to do some other things too, which, I'm not necessarily saying this unit, but for example, I have a lot of outputs and inputs, on this machine. And then also I have 4 nice, decent, clean preamp outputs on there, which you can control with the RME software, which is really flexible too. The inside of, I mean, I don't want to get too much into it, and I don't know that you can see it really well because my fat head's in the way, but like, just a minute here. This over here in this right corner here, over here, is the RME Fireface software. And like you've got all your channels, and it can be a bit confusing and overwhelming when you first start using it, but it also has this matrix where you can like reroute things through the software, but make it do it through the hardware. It's pretty cool. And it allows you to do a lot of cool stuff with Pro Tools that you might not be able to do as far as like streaming audio out of Pro Tools into what I'm using right now, which is OBS Studio, while also capturing anything. Like if I was playing a YouTube video, I could capture it into OBS as well, but then I could also capture Pro Tools output as well as if like a microphone in like I'm doing now. The loopback function and a lot of the other stuff and the ADAT outputs and all these like virtual outputs that the RME Total Mix FX software that comes with the unit can allow you to do is actually pretty helpful and makes it really flexible. And it has a lot of power to it, but it is confusing at first. You'll have to watch some YouTube videos of exactly what the hell's going on with it, because when you first look at it, you're like, I don't understand the correlation between the matrix view and the mixer view and what these ADATs are and like what all these faders mean. You know, it is overwhelming, but the reason it's overwhelming is because it's giving you the ability to do a lot of things with routing that some other interfaces might not be able to do. And I've had this one for a long time. I did have to replace the power supply on it once, but that's it. I've had it for a long time. I'm talking 13 years or so. And it's still rocking. And, you know, to tie that all together too, I have this thing over here. You can't really see it. It's got a little red. That is a power conditioner. That one's a Monster Pro 2500. But what it does is it takes the voltage spikes and all that irregularities, and because you can see it's flipping between 124 and 125. And what it does is it spits out whatever, like 120 volts clean all the time. And it offers a good ground for everything. And it tries to lower your electrical hum, which, you know, is important. You know, you want to alleviate any noise you can in your studio when you're in a home studio, because you probably don't have the luxury to record and do different things in rooms that are far away that are isolated off. Like you probably are in a similar situation to me where I don't have that luxury. So it's like, how do I make good mixes, you know what I mean, and get good vocal takes when I'm all in the same room? And it can be done. You just have to understand how to work, you know, how this equipment works and what it does. And gain staging is a big part of that too with vocals, but I'll go over gain staging on another tutorial all by itself one day, because that's really a bread and butter technique that you really, really do need to know. Trying to think if I have not talked about anything, but yeah. So what I was going back to is, you know, spending a good chunk of your money towards your interface. And, you know, then, yeah, you could throw your money down on some focals, you know, but when you're starting off, it's like what would be more versatile for you is to get a nice pair of closed back headphones that were nice flat headphones, because you could use them to track yourself while you're recording and have your sound isolated off into the headphones and not bleed out, because you don't want that when you are recording your vocals. So you want a nice pair of closed backs to keep that audio in and only record your voice out of it. When you mix, you probably, for comfort reasons, because you'll have them on longer, would like a pair of open backs like this that aren't closed backs like these. But that means you have to buy 2 pairs of headphones, and it's not a necessity. It's a comfort thing. So if you were under a budget, I would probably get the closed backs and you can kill 2 birds with one stone. I would try to do that. And, you know, another thing that you could think about if you're going to go down the road of that, I saw that Steven Slate Audio has these VXS headphones that come with a plug-in, I believe. I haven't seen a whole lot of it, but the premise of it seems cool. It's closed back headphones. So, you know, once again, your ears are in their own environment within these headphones. And then it comes with this plug-in where they've recorded all these algorithms and who knows what of these mixing engineers and mastering engineers, you know, ones that are known all across the world, I guess, and have kind of recreated their mixing rooms, their mastering rooms, and put them into these different packages that you can buy. I think the first one's $299. It goes up $299. I think it's 10 rooms, 10 different rooms. So if you had a lot of records that were mixed by a certain mixing engineer or mastered by a certain mastering engineer, and you just liked the way that their stuff was, like, then you would be, as long as you were using the headphones, you would be hearing that, I guess, is what they say, similar to the way that mixing engineer or mastering engineer would be hearing it in their studio that is specially treated and made for a pristine listening environment. Now, you wouldn't want to use that plugin on Pro Tools to use it through your speakers, because once the sound leaves your speakers, your room gets involved and it blows anything out of the water. With the headphones, the closed back headphones, it's keeping you in your own space, and it's providing you with that room's acoustic in here. So I don't own a pair, but I think it would be a cool thing. But, it's one of those things to think, like, what could I get? Maybe for $299, I'm getting a pair of closed back headphones, that I also can use to record my vocals with. And it comes with, some rooms that, will recreate a room that I would like to mix in anyway. And I just have to learn my ears and get comfortable with the headphones to use them, but that's a thing to think about. So, and then a microphone, I mean, yeah, you're probably not going to have a big budget, but, throw a couple $100 down. Or if you can find a good deal off a used one that's a nice one, Gearsluts.com is a good place to get a lot of information about stuff like that. Reddit has a lot of good threads about, just whatever when it comes to stuff like that. But, that's another thing you can think about. The microphone, you can upgrade that later. And the preamp, like I said, I mean, you could get yourself a preamp, but if you're just starting, you might be okay. I mean, you'd be okay with just using, if you could get an interface that has preamps on it. You could do the compression, just as long as you understood gain staging to a degree with the interface's preamp, you could do compression and all that stuff in the box, There's ways to start and still get a good product out of it. But I think that's I don't really know if, as far as basics go, if I haven't touched on anything I have or what, I mean, I would say, if you wanted me to summarize it, I would say you need a nice computer that can handle the workload, an interface that's going to, give you a good representation of what's going in and what's going out of it, and has all the other ins and outs capabilities and preamp capabilities that you want. You need something to listen to it through, and you're not going to be able to probably afford a really, really nice set of monitors. So headphones might be the way to go, and they're more flexible. You'll get more out of them. They'll serve you more use than throwing the money down on monitors immediately. At some juncture, yeah, you'd want to get them. And a microphone. I think I already said that, but yeah, I mean, and if you play guitar and you have a microphone, you could probably, if you play acoustic, you could capture it with the microphone just the same as you did your voice. Or if it had a line out or something, you could go line into your interface. So it's mostly about, when you get equipment, think about what you're wanting to achieve when you buy the equipment. Look at a few different units and see what the pros and cons of them are in that price range. And kind of lost my train of thought there for a second, but when you're buying things like that, you just want to make sure that you're making the most of your money. But when you're buying it, and that the hardware and the pieces of equipment and the software and the plugins that you get, that you take the time to learn to understand what they do, because you spent a lot of money on them. You might as well learn them. And once you do learn them, you can learn how to chain them together, and know that this compressor has this kind of sound, and this compressor, this one, or this EQ, and you'll know, like, oh, I bet if I throw this compressor on here, EQ it like this, and then run it through this compressor, it's going to sound like this. That comes with time. But if you're familiar with your pieces of hardware, you'll realize that, like, if you had, and your plugins too, you can do a whole lot by coupling them together. But that's kind of a, like a rundown of what I have, my philosophy on building a studio and some of the do's and don'ts, and how to get the most bang for your buck, and what everything does and what role it plays and everything. So I mean, I may not have made that any more clear than mud, but I appreciate you giving me a chance and spending the evening with me. And I'll be back on soon with another tutorial. And peace and chicken grease.